There's been a lot of hand-wringing and instead of hand clapping in the last few days that's followed up from the disastrous United States appearance in Trinidad and Tobago and disastrous loss to lowly Trinidad and Tobago, which knocked U.S. out of the World Cup. And a lot of people, and a lot of pundits who previously had one view have changed their view to reflect what they think is the current prevailing thought, the most popular thought. But most of them are really taking a 180-degree view from what they were before. And with that in mind, I'd like to bring up Jermaine Jones, who's an American soccer player, an ex-national team player, currently with the LA Galaxy, in the past with Eintracht Frankfurt and with Schalke and with Blackburn Rovers of the EPL. Jermaine Jones grew up in Germany. He was born to an American serviceman father and a German mother. He grew up in the German soccer system. He was educated, raised, taught, coached by the German coaches. And as most European players or most global players, Jermaine Jones wanted to play at the highest level possible. He played for the German national team, although he wasn't an etched-in starter. And when he realized he couldn't play for them, he switched to the United States. But of course, the goal is to play for the best team possible. And he played for some pretty good teams. And in his desire to play for the better teams, he's really no different than American players, except soccer players. Any American player, and if you remember Crash Jones from Bull Durham, you want to be at the show. You want to play at the show. In other words, you want to play at the major league. Double A is nothing. Triple A is nothing. You want to be in the show, at the show, in the show. You want to be with a major league baseball team. Anything else is rarely considered a failure, at least to oneself. Whether, friends think he has been somebody, even if he had a cup of coffee at the major club. And so this brings us back to MLS. MLS is not a big show. It's not a major league soccer in the sense that it anoints itself to be one. The big leagues are in Europe. The big leagues are, as we all know, or those who watch me should know, England, France, Spain, Germany, Italy, and everything else kind of falls below them. Any player, anywhere, ought to want to play for those leagues, or in those leagues. And once he is there, he wants to play for the best teams in those leagues. You want to play for Real, for Bayern, you want to play for Manchester United, City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Tottenham. You want to be the elite. You want to feel like you belong at the very top echelon of world players. In 1999, Landon Donovan was considered a big enough prospect to be one of those elite, to eventually have one of those elite teams as his goal. Coming off an excellent performance at the 1999 Under-17 World Cup, Landon Donovan signed with Bayern Leverkusen, which at the time was one of the top European teams, headed by the rotund Rainer Kallmund, who was then a general manager of the team, who was once caught delivering huge amounts of cash to some Serbian agents or Croatian agents, and by then was drummed out of his job. But under Rainer Kallmund, Bayer Leverkusen played in the final of the Champions League in 2001, where lost a great strike by Zinedine Zidane. And it was a great team with Mikhail Balak and Dimitar Berbatov, Andrei Voronin, and Jörg Butt, Karsten Ramelov, so on and so on, Lucio and Juan. We really had a great roster. So Bayer Leverkusen, looking for talent anywhere they could find a talent, found Landon Donovan as one of the top prospects from the U17 World Cup. It signed Landon Donovan. Obviously, it could give him a lot more money than he could get at the time in a fledgling MLS. Donovan went there. Leverkusen did not fit Donovan's taste. According to his personal preference, according to his personal relationships, according to his yearning for love in the United States, Landon Donovan flaked out of Europe. Landon Donovan came back to the United States. The United States and MLS, or at least MLS, was more than happy to welcome Landon Donovan and pay him a decent amount of money to stay home. Eventually, his loan to MLS expired and he had to go back to Germany, go back to Bayern Leverkusen, when it was still one of the big clubs in Europe. His heart obviously wasn't in it. The most crushing was his appearance against Liverpool at home, where Bayer had a chance to win. I think it was the quarterfinal match, quarterfinal series against home and away. And Donovan was awful. How awful was he? Well, he was taken off at the 60th minute. He was given the lowest grade by their German soccer writers. In other words, they were convinced that he did not want to play and that really he did not belong at this scene. And it's not that Donovan didn't have physical ability, or at least physical ability to be something in that scene, that he didn't have mental ability. He was scared. You know, he's like a wide receiver that goes up the, runs some sort of a middle of the field route, sees a safety coming back, and he just throws his hands up. Don't hit me, I'm not going to catch the ball. And so Donovan decided to come back, and MLS took him back. Not only did it take him back as a failure, they took him back as a hero. They gave him a lot of money. I mean, they raised his income, or his salary, wage, whatever you want to call it, to about $900,000 a year. They rewarded his failure in Europe. Consequently, Donovan, and this is a psychological profile, decided that he accomplished everything he accomplished, he set to accomplish. That was the goal. Make a lot of money and slack off, because you're not going to be punished in MLS. He's going to always start, he's going to always play, and it was the same thing with the United States. He was made the poster boy of U.S. soccer. Consequently, without any sort of coaching reprimand, he went to the 2006 World Cup and stunk. Later on, a couple of years later, or maybe a few months later, he apologized for his play. But nonetheless, he was awful. Bruce Arena, who was then the coach, couldn't control him. He couldn't motivate him. He couldn't reprimand him. He couldn't leave him off the roster. He couldn't even take him out of the match. And so Landon Donovan's failures were rewarded by MLS, and they were rewarded by U.S. Soccer. They were rewarded by the coach, Bruce Arena. And here we have to give Bob Bradley some, or maybe perhaps a lot of credit. Prior to 2010 World Cup, actually in 2009 already, so it was a year and a half before the World Cup, Donovan and Bob Bradley, under Bob Bradley, decided that Donovan ought to try Europe again. Now, his contract was coming up, so he had personal motivation to go out and prove himself. And so he went to Bayern, where he failed once again for the same reason. He wasn't mentally ready to play against or with A-type personalities. He was awful. He was giving on the worst grades, or the worst grades in the field, one of the worst grades ever, by the kicker. And once again, he came back. But this time, a year later, he went back to Europe. This time, not to Germany, but he went to England. He went to Everton. And Everton's style suited him. And he got his confidence there. And when 2010 World Cup started, he played with confidence. He played like a real player. He scored a really good goal against Slovenia. He scored against Algeria. They went in the next round, and that was one of the best looking U.S. teams of all time. Although they had holes in the back, but that's a different story. What has happened since then is that MLS took Donovan as a precedent and began to bring in older, aging players on high wages. And at the same time, it began to pay, or really done so before, play Native American, well, some are not so native, to pay American-born, American-bred MLS players more money to stay in MLS without going abroad. Now, it even involves somebody like Breck Shea, who's a mediocre player, or but was considered a great talent, but who went abroad, failed, and then came back to a fat contract, at least fat enough for Breck Shea. And so MLS began to accumulate players like Josie Altidore, like Clint Dempsey. Although Clint Dempsey had proved himself, but now he was in a declining stage. He was over 30. And they began to pay him a lot of money. Lots and lots of money. And they were rewarding coming back from major league, from big European leagues, England, Germany, Italy, to what essentially is a double A. If you take Major League Baseball as Major League, MLS would be sort of a double A level. And if you want to compete at the Major League level, you want to have Major League players, not double A level players. Double A means failure. And that's what it was. That's what you saw over the last few matches, against Costa Rica, even against Panama. Although Panama, was a big win, not played well everywhere, but Panama played poorly also. And that's what happened. MLS rewarded failure. Now, when you watch ESPN soccer talk, or you watch, sports talk shows, everybody brings it up. Why is MLS bringing these players up? Why is MLS not selling players to Europe? And the answer is MLS doesn't produce players that European clubs want. In other words, it's a double A league, and it produces double A players. And it pays them well enough, in fact probably more than double A players should make. In Euros, they'll say, we'll take him, but we're not going to pay much, or we'll pay him only when he deserves. Now, Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie and Haji Wright, those guys went to Europe, went to the minor leagues, took the money from European clubs instead of MLS, and are trying to improve themselves in a league that's known for developing great stars, which is not MLS, because MLS is not known for developing stars. It's not even known for developing mediocrities. It's known for nothing. Look at the players that MLS drafts every year, and look how many of them come out to be international quality. And the answer is pretty much none. I mean, Matt Beasler is not international quality, or whoever they pick in the high up in the draft. Those players stagnate. And when you have years and years of stagnation, you have a decline, because the competition is getting better. As Bruce Arena said, and as I said on this very channel a while ago, Mexico had 3 players with European experience in 2002, and they have about 15 to 18 now. So now they have the prime of their team is not some over their age guys who failed in Europe. It's guys in their prime from mid to late 30s, some in the early 20s, mid to late 20s, who are experienced in Europe. Their coach isn't very good in my opinion, but the players are better. So when the Mexicans will be able to put both coaches and the players together, they'll be a good team. Now, with this coach and these players, Mexico got as high as number 10 by ELO in the rankings, and it's kind of computerized power ranking. And so this time they're a little bit lower, but they were as high as 10. U.S. is at number 32. American-born players, American race player, an incompetent American coach. And that's what you get when you combine 2 bad apples and pour it in another barrel full of bad apples. Bye.